Okay, so I'm thinking it's time for a fun video. I think it's time to have another research video, and we're going to talk about reselling coffee mugs. And we've talked about coffee mugs in the past, but I always start to think about them a little bit more right now, this time of year, because as the temperatures start dropping, it does seem, at least in parts of the United States, and they drop in parts of the world right now, it does seem like my mug sales do end up picking up. We're shipping a lot more mugs than we do the rest of the year. So we have talked about coffee mugs in the past. If you look at my channel, if you were to do this, if you cared enough, and you filtered my videos from most popular to least, the top popular videos were about coffee mugs. So we all, I think resellers are fascinated, are interested in looking at coffee mugs because why? Because we see them everywhere. They're at thrift stores, they're at garage sales. A lot of times they're one of the most inexpensive things we can find in those places. So in the past, my mug videos, I think, were a little bit more specific. We talked about like top selling coffee mugs, like this particular mug sells for $100. Try to be on the lookout for this particular mug, right? Today, I thought we'd go a little bit different, and we're going to talk about mug categories, mug types, that when I see them, I don't really even have to think that hard. If the price is right, I'll just grab it because I know they're going to sell. Now, I want to say that these are not necessarily going to be the highest price mugs that you'll ever sell, but they'll still be decent. I have kind of a limit of, I don't like to sell a mug. $15 at this point is probably the lowest I want to sell a mug. Sometimes I'll sell one that's been sitting for a while and let it go a little bit cheaper just to move things on. But for the most part, 15 and higher, 20 makes me happy, 25 makes me even happier. And anything above that is just a bonus, right? Okay, so we're going to talk, like I said, about 5 different categories or types of mugs that I'll pick up at thrift stores in order to resell on eBay, on Etsy. And here's a quick little tip. I get better prices on Etsy for coffee mugs than I do on eBay. And as we look at examples today, some of the examples I'm seeing and sold on eBay, we've sold those same mugs on Etsy for $10 more or even higher. So just kind of keep that in mind. We're also selling our mugs on Poshmark because, especially now with a little bit of a lower shipping, people are okay with picking up those coffee mugs. They did before too, but it had to usually be pretty special. Okay, one more caveat before we get started, and we're going to talk, I just wanted to mention, as I always do in these research videos, that these videos should just be your starting point. This is not the be all end all. Don't take exactly my word for everything. Your mileage may vary, all that kind of thing. And I did try to confirm pricing. So when I say something sold for a certain amount, unless I missed it, I did try to check and confirm the sold price over on Terapeak, or I'll let you know what the actual selling price was if I found out something different. Okay, so let's get into that first category. And I do have an example of this one that I'm going to share with you right now. And that is a no spill coffee mug. Whenever I see the no spill, these wide bottom coffee mugs, if they're a good price, I'm going to pick them up because we've sold them over and over and over again. This one is by Barely Surviving. It's marked here on here, and it's from 1982, has bunnies around it, kind of unusual. I looked for comps for this mug. I haven't listed it yet. But I looked for comps for this mug. I used the research tab and I found some black ones. And I think the highest sold for this was $17. But I'm going to go higher. I'm going to shoot for $24 to $30. Again, I can get better prices on Etsy, but I may be able to move it as well on eBay a little bit faster, maybe for a few dollars less. We'll see. So just some features of a no spill mug. There's different names and keywords also that you can use. I usually say wide bottom. It does have a narrower top, which is lovely just in general because you have less surface area. So your beverage is going to stay hotter longer. It usually has a rubber bottom, so it doesn't slip as easily on a surface. Now, these were also called maybe commuter mugs in the past before travel mugs became so popular. They're very popular. We'll see as we look at examples that the nautical theme is very popular because they're great on boats. They're great on your desk, etc., etc. So popular style mug, all different styles and designs. And let's go over to the computer and take a look at them right now. Okay, so we're looking here on the eBay sold page, just sorted by ending recently. So you can just see some of the mugs that have sold recently. As we can see, lots of different styles. We've got some pottery, we've got some souvenir type mugs. One was plastic, we've got SeaWorld, all different mugs. But let's take a quick look and go through some sold prices. See how they sold, and just a few examples for you guys to kind of cement in your mind, again, the style, the shape that we're looking for these. Just different examples. This first one is by Otagiri. We love Otagiri. That's another one of those brands that we've talked about in mug videos before. But an Otagiri travel mug, this would be a total no-brainer for me. And this mug with the cats on it did sell for $24.95. The next up is another Barely Surviving. This one does have that nautical theme that we were talking about. It even has the sticker, no spill, no slide. They call it a mariner mug. And it's got different boats and things like that on there. Again, no lid on this one. Here's a fun one. It's a ceramic Budweiser no spill coffee mug. And it's the Angler's Edition. It says back here, it's an official Budweiser product, and that one did sell for $49.95. Next up is just a fun one with no advertising, no motif or anything, just very retro, kind of unusual. They use the term trigger handle for the style of the handle. It can also be called a B handle. But just kind of those fun retro colors, and that one actually sold for $32 is what I found out. And then here's a no spill ceramic Cape Cod souvenir mug. That one sold for $25. Just easy peasy, find them, fairly often, and they usually do sell pretty quickly. Here's some examples of some that we have sold on Etsy. This is a Hot Joe mug. Sometimes you'll find these with Starbucks logos on them as well. We've sold those. This one is a no spill. It's like a travel mug. This one does come with a lid. If you can see, it's marked Hot Joe as well. And in that same line of thought, this was just plain black. And I decided I wanted $35 for it. And so that's what I asked for on Etsy, and that's what I got. Here's our example of one of the Mariner mugs that we found. This was like a Texas rodeo mug. Go figure. But anyway, that one sold for $25. And here's one of our also Feltman Langer. That's a name to look out for these. $24 for this Captain mug. I noticed in our solds that a while back we also sold a Captain's mug with 3 just other similar style, but they didn't say Captain. They just had pictures of the nautical flags and things like that. And the people who bought it, I sold the whole set for $50. The people who bought it were like, this is so great for our family sailing trip. So they're going to bring them on their boat. And that's what we were talking about. So this particular one with the Captain sold for $24. And then the last one I want to show is just a Studio Pottery mug. It did have a Feltman Langer cap, but it just rested in the top, so I think they had bought the cap separate or had it from another mug or something like that. And anyway, this was not marked. It's just Studio Pottery, and it sold, I had to look it up. It sold for $18. I even used the word chubby on this one because it's nice little round compact little mug. So we did love this one. This one was really cool. Okay, so this gives me a transition into the next topic that we wanted to talk about, And that was Studio Pottery. So a Studio Pottery mug, I thought I had an example here. I was looking in my stash of mugs, but I think the last few Studio Pottery mugs we sold recently. So I'll show you a picture of those in a second, and we'll look a little bit closer at some of these examples that I'm about to show you on the computer. But in general, what you want to be looking for is it's a non-commercial mug. It's not from a commercial studio or commercial fabrication place or anything like that. It could just be one person and who signs their work, and they just have a small studio that they create out of. So, there might be a few people in their studio, but for the most part, it's a smaller operation. Now, the thing we want to be careful of with studio mugs, they're really hard to say, oh, pick this one, pick that one. But to me, so far, the ones we've sold, if they're interesting, if they're well made, okay? So not like if I made a mug in high school ceramics class, it would not be something that you guys would want to drink out of, okay? So a good high quality Studio Pottery mug, it feels good in your hand. It's nice and not clunky and chunky and everything like that. But it's pretty, it's well balanced, all that kind of thing. The bottoms are usually unglazed. So this is a regular coffee mug we'll talk about later, but see how it's glazed at the bottom. Now, a Studio Pottery mug is generally unglazed at the bottom. If it's signed, it's really helpful if you can figure out who the artist is. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Sometimes the handwriting is really easy to read. You can figure it out. Sometimes it's a stamp or something like that. Now, I've mentioned this in other videos before, but there is a very helpful group on Facebook, Studio Pottery Identification. I'll put up a picture. And they are very helpful. Just follow their directions. They ask for pictures of the mark, pictures of the whole mug. And then in your query, you need to ask, or you need to say where you found it, what state, what location, kind of that idea. That kind of gives people a starting, even though mugs and pottery can travel all over the country, it gives them a starting point to kind of confirm who the artist might be, okay? So let's look at a few examples, and we'll look at the prices that they sold at, and you can tell me what you guys think in the comments below of Studio Pottery mugs. Have you found any? Have you sold any? Let's run over to the computer. Okay, we're starting with this fun one by Jim Klingman, Studio Pottery. It has double handles. This is very unusual. The actual selling price on this one was $30, but not bad. Let's see if we can get down to a picture of the bottom. Okay, so it's unglazed. It does have some color, but that makes the Klingman signature show up nice and clear. Okay, so very different kind of style, but that one sold for $30. Let's move over to this one. This one is kind of a different look. This is Ann Scheisel Harris. ASH might have been the signature on the bottom. Let's take a look. ASH. Just very unfinished bottom, like we were saying, unglazed, but then a nice little ASH mark in there so we can figure out who made it. This one did sell for $36. Totally different look than the other one. This one, again, another different kind of look. This is OM Studio. Confetti, speckled, kind of a different look. We see the handle has kind of a different flair to it. And I believe that one, I couldn't find this one. I don't know why. I used some of the keywords and I couldn't find it, but I found another one by this studio that had sold for $50. So, or maybe that ended up being an active one. I'm not sure. Sometimes if the research tab can't show you a sold one, they'll pop an active one up. And if I wasn't paying attention, then anyway, it sold a little bit less than $40 or somewhat less than $40, but another example of what Studio Pottery can look like. This might be a little bit more of what you might think of right now, and even maybe that first one, but very like the earth tones. It fits in really well with very popular aesthetics right now. It fits in well with kind of a mid-century look, but a boho look. Jungalo is a word I hear sometimes, kind of a modern, and then there's modern farmhouse, like rustic, primitive. It fits into a lot of different styles. And so we found that a lot of our rustic studio pottery mugs actually sold pretty well, even if we didn't know who the maker was. This one actually did sell for $49.95. It's kind of cool looking. And then here's another one, again, kind of rustic, fun glazes on this one. This one sold for $30. And then we're going to go into Etsy to look at an example of one that I sold. This one I sold for $27 and I had no maker mark on it or anything like that. And it was actually fairly small. Sold for $27, had this really cool incised fish design on it, but kind of that, rustic look. People are digging it. Okay. Then here are the two that I sold recently on eBay. As you can see, they bought both of them, and they were both Montana pot artists, is what I wanted to say. This one was marked Patrick Creek Pottery. So Jim Flaherty was the artist on that one. Brian Rumage, his was signed 2012, so not even vintage yet. But it was a local Montana person who bought them both. So it paid on these particular ones, and I know the Studio Pottery group on Facebook helped me with both of these, or at least this one. I think the Patrick Creek Pottery I figured out myself. But anyway, $20 for this one and $25 for that one. Okay, so an offshoot of the Studio Pottery mugs is another type of studio pottery, but we're going to call it category 3 and make it its own category. And that is... These are mugs that I like to call ugly face mugs. Here's a picture of one I found and sold recently. Now, I only sold mine for $20, but it wasn't one of the bigger names. It's actually a beer stein, and I got an offer and I took it, and it sold probably within 30 days of me listing it. So that worked just fine for me. But again, I have no example in hand to show you. I don't come across them super, super often, but all the ones I found I have sold. So sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Okay, so let's go over to the computer and take a look at a few more examples. Okay, we start off right at the top. I didn't check the prices on any of these, but just kind of like, that's like a work of art right there. And that's actually a mug, I guess, $179. You get an idea of why they're called ugly face mugs. Very whimsical, just lots of fun. I think they were pretty popular 70s and 80s are some of the dates I see on a lot of these. Here's one that's just an eyeball. And here's a few more examples. So some of these we'll look at a little bit closer up. So let's pop over to this one. This is a name that it's right here. It's Mahan or Mon Made is usually how it's marked, but that's a name to keep in mind because that does come up kind of often with these ugly face mugs. This is a cowboy. If you can kind of see, he's got a cigarette and all that kind of thing. The actual selling price on this one was $25. So again, they sell, I have a feeling some of the prices on these have come down a little bit, maybe have lost a little bit of popularity, but very different. You'll definitely see it. If you ever see one, you'll definitely see them on the shelf. They're kind of hard to miss. Here's another name that's kind of, I see a lot with these mugs is Eakin, E-A-K-I-N. This one cracks me up because it's a mug of an ugly face holding an ugly face mug. And I just think that is hilarious. It only sold for $25. I think it should have sold for more. And again, like I said, you might get better prices of these over on Etsy. I haven't checked lately, but anyway, super fun. Here's the three that we just saw. They sold all three for less than $50. So I probably would have split them up and put them, if If I got $25 a piece, then that's what I would have done, but that's just me. This one, actually, they took quite a big offer on this one as well, another $25, but they did free shipping on theirs, which I personally don't do free shipping, and I don't think you would have to on these to move it, unless there was some kind of damage or I don't know, something like that. So let's go over to just one kind of funny sale. Some of our ugly face mugs. I showed you the one that sold recently for us. Some of them were on an Etsy account that we don't have anymore, so I can't show you those sales anymore. But here's one sale we had quite a while ago, and this helps lead us into our next category. This is a face, and he's got a mustache, and so hopefully you can guess what the next category of mug is going to be. And yes, it's mustache mugs. And again, I don't have one to show you in hand because I've sold it. The one I had recently just sold, and I think I have it on the computer. You can see that in a second. But basically, as you saw in that last picture before we switched over to this camera, it's a regular coffee mug, but then on top, there's some kind of guard across the top. So as you drink, you're protecting your mustache, right? So just kind of fun. Again, something that you should be able to notice pretty quickly. Let's go over to the computer again and take a look at what eBay has to offer. Okay, so a lot of the mugs that we see with the mustache guards are kind of like this style. Old-fashioned kind of style mug, and you know, kind of masculine looking, very masculine themed, very manly. With the mustache mug, there might be trains, there might be ships, you know, that kind of thing. But just because we think of what men would like today, that doesn't mean that always held true. So a lot of the mustache mugs or cups that you find will also be antique. It's been a thing for a while, and a lot of them are actually cup and saucer shape. So that's kind of the few cups and saucers I'll pick up is one that have the mustache guards. And so don't be thrown by the fact that they're floral or they're anything like that. It's still a mustache cup or a mustache mug. It's still for a guy. He didn't care. He used something with flowers on it, okay? This Royal Crown Derby cup and saucer, $80. Oops, I think I forgot to check the price on that one. But I don't see or best offer in that listing, so it's a good chance that's what it sold for. Here's another kind of fancier one. A lot of times there's gold on the handles and the rim, and that has worn off because it was actually used. This one did sell for $45. And this one I think was $25.90. Very pretty, kind of feminine looking in our standards today, but very pretty design on that one. So some of our sales that we've had in the past, this one straight out right on it says Mustache Stein. This was one of those made in Japan, kind of made to look like it's German, but it's not. And here's the top. See, we got our mustache guard, $20 for that one. And here's an older Pacific Stoneware mustache mug, footed with, let's throw face mug in there too, right? Not quite as ugly, but you know, it's close. But this is kind of a, I've seen this mug sold several times. This one sold for $29. It had some of the paint missing and such. And then here's the one that I just recently found and sold. And this sold probably within a month or so. And pretty fitting that we're even talking about this because it is Movember. And I think that's why this sold at the beginning of November. But anyway, Brothers of the Brush, I thought was really interesting. It had a fireman. So I was like, what was that all about? Here is the top. And then here is the back. State of Oregon, right? So I had to look up what this Brothers of the Brush thing was. And it was basically that there were these clubs around the country, the United States, as far as I know, just the United States, where they would grow a mustache or grow a beard in like to commemorate an anniversary of, obviously, this is the state of Oregon, 1859. So it was probably 1959, and they made this mug, and people would grow mustaches to help commemorate it. So it was just kind of a club thing. It might be for a city, it might be for an organization or something like that. Anyway, I got all that off of Google, so you can go Google it yourself too. So anyway, that was just kind of fun, and that one sold for $29. Okay, we have to talk about the next category of mug, and so let's pop over to the other camera really quick. Now, our fifth and last category that we're going to talk about is a category that I would love to find more of, and that's diner mugs with advertising. And I suppose it could be diner mugs that are blank or plain as well. Usually those sell better in multiples. But in general, we're talking about diner mugs. Now, the two examples I have probably are not the greatest. This is a more modern one, Krispy Kreme, right? Nice, thick. You guys know what I mean when I'm talking about diner mugs or restaurant ware, those thick, like vitreous china mugs, right? So I don't even know what this sells for, if I even have it listed, but I wanted to give you show you that example of what I'm talking about. Here's another one I have in my stash, and I don't even know if this must have been listed at some point, but I don't know if it's even listed anymore. And it's Shenango, which is one of those restaurant ware mugs that you hear of fairly often. This is pretty plain. It's just got the red band. So the ones that I'm talking about today are mostly the ones with advertising, and those can actually sell for a pretty penny, especially rare examples of different things. So let's run back and let's look at some examples so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so you kind of got a little bit of a teaser there in that one because I did click over to this. But here's an example. It's Vintage Blue Diner, Boston. It's a restaurant. It says it's rare, and that might just be based on what they could find when they were researching. But just a thick diner mug advertising a restaurant. Sometimes those diners or restaurants are no longer in business, and that's what makes things valuable. Sometimes it's older logos that aren't in use anymore, and so people collect those as well. So that's super fun. Another topic can be military. There can be military, like U.S. Navy, or it can be medical, or just different topics like that people end up collecting. So here's another example, Hoff's Hut, Los Angeles, California. This is a nice little thick diner mug for a restaurant out there, $45 for that one. Here's a big boy. It says it's an early logo, and so that they ran as auction and got one bid for $50. Nice sunny yellow color on that one. Here's an up close of the little logo on the inside. Then we have this is Jackson China. So this isn't so much an advertising mug, but it's part of a pattern, this one and the next one. So it's a dishware pattern. And whether this was used at a restaurant, that's entirely possible. But this was purple and it's got an elk on it. And so the bids went up to $37 on that one. And before, this isn't the one I was talking about, but $55 for this Wellsville China Maxwell House, good to the last drop, little tiny coffee mug, and that is so cool. So anyway, that sold for $55. You could just picture it being used in a little diner somewhere back in the day. Here's the other dinnerware pattern one I was talking about. Western patterns on restaurant ware can do really well. These two round mugs, Westward Ho, I think is the name of the dinnerware pattern. $53 for these Wallace China, two little mugs. And that's super exciting. Now, sharing my sales, like I said, some of these, this one didn't sell for a whole lot, $15 I think it was. It was a while back in my Etsy shop. Some of my other good sales, again, are in that Etsy shop that closed, but I also sold, this is just super fun. I have a little bit of nostalgia for Dunkin' Donuts because I grew up in New York and we don't have them out west where I am. And so When I find these little Dunkin' mugs, I usually pick them up. They're not worth a ton, but I've sold them multiple times. This one was $14, but it's tiny. It holds like 6 ounces of coffee. Okay, so I think that is it. Yeah. So as always, share your thoughts below about your experience with any of these topics of coffee mugs. And if you want another coffee mug video, I did have a whole dedicated video to one category of mug that I think you might find interesting, and I will put a link to that video right here. You guys have a wonderful day.